Leto the Bandito from Benavimito. Avoiding any thoughts of his previous dream team and travelling along that winding road far beyond his own reckonings, in distant lands of both mystery and wonder, there came upon Eugene a wounded bandito who, like a half-crazed cuckoo clock, had sprung out of a grass patch. He barked at Eugene, demanding any money or booze, and half-heartedly swung a blade around before collapsing in his own wretchedness and muck. Eugene had been hitting Nancy's mescal during a crazed 10-hour sex marathon earlier in the day, and having taken something akin to 2 tabs of peyote from his own private stash, and after questioning his very being of existence, had wandered up this unique path to be closer to nature in the twilight of the evening sunset. Given his good nature, to the best of his limited ability, Eugene struck up a conversation with the fallen man. "How goes there, man of the trees? Or the bush, or what have you?" inquired Eugene.
I am a man from the trees.
Laughed the bandito bitterly.
I am also of the earth, the salt of the rock from the regions of Benavimito. I am a bandito called Leto, a quite famous bandito indeed. You'd have many a reason to quail in terror were I had not been gutted like a fish.
Eugene asked the man to explain his situation while he quietly pondered if he was floating off the ground. Leto the Bandito from Benavimito explained that he was involved in a murder plot. He had been framed for murdering the husband of a fair lady of the valley. As a result, he had also been stabbed in the belly. The lady supposedly had also died. The lady had been wandering through a local path through the trees when he had caught her gaze.
Now they are saying I murdered a man over this woman and the rice bowl. God, man, I could use something to drink. Well, they passed on the road and I offered the couple some rice. She said she was hungry enough to eat a horse. He said he could eat 2 horses and then some. I smiled and grit my teeth and said, I don't have any horses. All I have is rice. So then they says to me in words of mighty suspicion, like, in the forests, rice. I say to him, it's the whitest rice in the region. And he looks at me and goes, I'm more of a brown rice man. She says, oh, we are ever so hungry. Perhaps you ought to consider what this man has to say. I says, well, do you want the rice or don't you? He says, well, yes, I suppose I do. I says, then Leto Benavimito will show you more white rice than you've ever seen in your wildest dreams. I'll show you the rice bowls of the valley, man. Anyway, eventually they seem to see things my way, and I'm taking them to see the rice bowls, man. This man was pathetic the whole way. We go through a few bushes, and he's moaning about leeches, about the heat, too many thorns. It's a jungle, man. What a baby. She wasn't much better, mind you, but at least she kept it to herself,
The bandito told of how he brought the woman and the man to an abandoned Asaki temple, where rice had been given to mourn the passing of the valley people who died in the horrors of the hurricane they called Why Not.
After much convincing, the 3 of us finally ate some rice together, and everyone had to admit that the results pointed in one direction. It was some damn good rice. So good, in fact, that the man kept eating and eating and eating until he grew too big. His stomach burst apart! I swear it, there was blood all over me, and you'd never have guessed it, but she was allergic to the fucking rice! To the fucking rice, man! I heard the woman say to me, Leto, run away with me. Kiss me in the moonlight. I feel so cold, Leto. She was allergic to the fucking rice. This gorgeous beauty makes you cry to look upon her. And then she was dead, man. I saw her life exiting her body before my eyes. I ran away and was chased out of town. I got ambushed by some bounty hunters, man. And I fought them off. Killed them all, I think. But they stabbed me. I don't even remember them stabbing me. I ran off before more of them could catch up to me. Before I...
This sounds like a story? Don't get me wrong. I love story time. One of my favorite times, says Captain Eugene, as he wonders how far off the ground he'd have to start floating to be able to escape this bandito's negative vibe and rambling story. The story seemed at its zenith, but still, the bandito had more to ramble on about. Eugene hoped Nancy wouldn't stumble upon the 2 of them and assume they were friends. Eugene found himself getting nostalgic for Nancy, as if she were already a long-lost memory and he was stuck forever to hear the eternal ramblings of this insane, wounded bandito echoed across the ripples of eternity. To Eugene's delight, he discovered he had finally floated high enough in the sky to have escaped the bandito's tiresome story. He had floated so high in the clouds that he stumbled onto the spirit of the valley. "I am the spirit of the valley. Pleased to make your acquaintance, Captain." Captain Eugene responded politely that he had no idea what was happening, and the spirit of the valley informed him that the man from Gladys and the lady from Gladys would like to tell the captain their version of the truth. Despite the captain's protests, this unfolded as he heard the account of the rice bowl incident from the two parties who appeared before him as flying phantoms. They seemed to speak at the same time, constantly intercutting and interrupting each other. What made this worse was that both versions of the story contradicted each other. The common point between them seemed to be that the rice was sacred rice, and thus cursed. She seemed to be speaking of Leto the Bandito as a brute that had forced the rice upon them and murdered her when she refused to run away with him and be his bride. But in the man's story, she had wanted to be the Bandito's bride, and he had refused her for putting on weight eating the rice. And in her story, she hardly ate any of the rice. Oh, but the man said she indeed ate lots of the rice. She ate the rice all right. I didn't eat the rice. You ate the fucking rice. I didn't eat the fucking rice. I didn't know it was sacred rice, okay? Sure, I had a little bit of rice, but I didn't know it was sacred rice. I bet if you did know it was sacred rice, you'd have eaten it anyway. Because you're a big fat la la la, I'm not listening, la 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 la. Yeah, because you're a big fat slob now. Pig! Eugene figured, much like the bandito, that these two were also bad vibe drips, and realizing that he could fly, slowly backed away from them and flew away. Doing acrobatics in the sky, he spun around, flipping, diving, and gliding up into the high sky. He had never truly felt so alive getting away from this horribly derivative story. He pondered the subjectivity of truth and the quicksand of man's ego, the absolute depths of illusion that surround us, when in truth one could just fly. He thought about his dream team and longed to return them all back together, to hold and to embrace them one final time. Eventually he landed, or to be more accurate, he passed out, throwing up onto his own face. When he awoke, he stumbled into town and bought a newspaper. There was a story about a man and a woman who had stolen sacred rice bowls from the local temple and had died mysteriously, and of a Leto the Bandito from Benavimito who was somehow involved and facing serious charges. To add to matters, there was an inside scoop told of a woodcutter that had seen the whole thing, and the truth of the matter was that Eugene did not care to continue reading this story. He had been sporting an awful post-trip headache, and it was time to return to Nancy for some aftercare.